When I first came back to UCFL last year, there's a word that naturally flows out of my mouth at the end of every single prayer. And we have learned the power, the presence, and the activity of the word together. And that word is Ashe. Someone asked me a couple of weeks ago, they said, "Hey, Rev, why do we say it twice?" And I said, well, a little for me, a little for y'all. So every time you say it, a little for you, a little for some, for everyone else around you. The power of that word lives in its meaning. It says that I am the power that makes things happen and produces change in my life. Anybody else know that they are the power that makes stuff happen in your life? So let me tell you how I came in contact with this word. It was about 25 years ago when I was still living in Denver. I had a chance to attend a lecture at the University of Colorado that was being offered by Iyanla Vanzant. And at that time, she had a book that I had been poring over called In the Meantime. And at the beginning of the lecture, she prayed. Beautiful prayer. And at the end of that, she said, Ashe, Ashe. And I looked up as though she called me by my name, because those words spoke to me. And so at the end of that time, I had a chance to get my book signed. And while she was signing my book, I leaned over the table and I said, "Can I ask you a question?" And she said, "Mm-hmm." I was like, "You said Ashe, Ashe. What does that mean?" And she started to explain the derivation of it and what it meant. And she looked up, and for a moment, our eyes locked together, and she reached out and she handed me that book. And she said to me, "You are the power that makes things happen in your life." You see, it's one thing to understand that there is power, that we have power, but there's a whole different ball game being played when you get to the place where you decide that you are the power. Anybody else know what I'm talking about? Or do I need to turn the page and go flip to another topic? I don't know what that would be. Who knows what would fall out of this book? But there is something about it that allowed me to see myself a little more clearly when I accepted the idea that I am the power that makes things happen in my life. That means that I can't lay blame outside of me. It's nobody's fault. Nobody missed my prayer request. Nobody was listening to me. It is all about what I can produce in the world for myself. And when I started to realize these words, that's when I realized today that my bottom line, if you don't hear anything else I say, is that you are the power. You are the point and the locus of that which happens in your life. There is nobody to blame. My relationship with the God of my creation changed when I stopped blaming God for all the stuff that didn't go right for me. When I got to that place and I realized that God is not a distant deity beyond me, but God is the activity, the power, the presence that shows up everywhere I show up. The first time I heard the prayer for protection, we got to the end and said, "Everywhere that I am, God is." That was news to me. Because the first time that I toured the facility when I was coming to be an intern, I looked in every door like I was looking for something. Because I wanted to know if this was a community that believed that they had God locked in the back room and only let God out on Sundays. And when I heard that prayer for protection, my soul heard it. Because then I went, okay, this isn't a Sunday morning experience. This is an everyday, all the time experience of transformation. And when I think about the idea of transformation, I realize that transformation is not a one-time deal. It's not something that you have a coupon for once in your life you get to use, and poof, that's it. Transformation is deeper than that, beloved. Transformation is an everyday, all the time, wherever you are, when you feel like it type of activity. Amen? Anybody else realize that? That it can happen all the time. And so when I say that to you today, I say to you today that you are the power. Now, can we affirm that together? I am the power.
I am the power.
Now say it like you mean it. I am the power. And that's how you roll through the rest of your week this week. No matter what's happening, you're stuck in traffic on I forgive, I am the power. When you go to Publix with everybody else in Orlando, I am the power. When that line over hospitality is a little longer than you thought it was going to be, I am the power, and yes, there's more than enough chicken for you. Yes. So I want to draw you to a text that I keep going back to. And it is written by the Reverend Dr. Sue Seeking, and it's called Only Believe. And she says this: the power that will reshape and transform the outer world will come forth from the innermost parts of each one of us. Transformation is not sitting at the corner of so-and-so and so-and-so. It does not exist inside of a zip code, an area code, or any level of geography. Transformation and the power that it brings, it exists in you. Transformation doesn't show up in a room until you get there with your magical, mystical, metaphysical self. Come on down, because that's the way that this moves. Transformation is an all-the-time activity. So today, the power in me speaks to the power in you and calls you to come out from wherever you are, because you are welcome here. That's not just the lyrics to a song, that is a reality of our practice as a community. So when we start to think about this, you can say to yourself, Rev, what can I do with this in my life? And my answer, I want it to be short and I want it to be clear. Everything. Everything. You can do everything in your life when you start to realize that you are the power. The piece that I realized that was important to me was going from having the power, because sometimes I might forget the power. I might forget the power like I forget my glasses or my keys or where I park my car. But the one thing I have yet to forget in my life is my name. I know who I am. And when I know that, I also know that I am the power. So when you start to think about what do you do with all of this, the easiest and best thing that you can do with all of this is to be your whole and beautiful divine self wherever you find yourself in the coming moments of your life. That's all you got to do. Friends of mine say to me, you got one job, and that one job is to be you, to do you. Easy as cake, because guess what? If you're doing you, nobody else knows whether you're doing it right or wrong. You're just doing what is true for you. And so when we think about what does this matter in our lives, I realize that Ashe, being the power that makes things happen and produces the level of change that I need to see in myself and in my world. What this tells me is the words that come from Proverbs 18 and 16. It says that your gifts make room for you. And they make room for you in the places of greatness. Well, the cool thing about that is when the power in you speaks to the power in others, that's what opens the door. That's what clears the space for you to be all of who you were meant to be. You see, when you know that you are the power, the gift that is you sits among the gifts that are everybody else. And no one's gift is diminished by any means. You see, I can hang out in a room with Rev, and I'm just as much me as she is her. Our gifts don't overlap. They don't bump into each other. We are who we are in the same space. When I first came to Unity, I saw a lot of bumper stickers in the parking lot that said coexist. And that meant that we can be in the same place at the same time. And only good stuff can happen. So when you realize that the power of you is resident in the moment, that means that you can be wherever you are. And the good stuff that is you does not conflict or overlap the good stuff that is in anyone else. So when I think about what do I do as I go from this place, and how I use the power of prayer written by Harold Sherman, he says, it's not the words that you use, but the thoughts you think that influences the creative power in you. You see, the creative power in you is in there with all the thoughts. It's all mixed up in the you that you are together. Not the words you say, but the things you think. And there is no level of perfection involved in this, because I catch myself a lot where I, in the midst of saying something that I probably shouldn't say, I back that up and go, okay, hold on. I got to go back to my highest thought. And it's not a long journey. It's not a long distance call. Our highest thought is right there. So when you find yourself in those moments, go back to your higher thought. You know how to get there. Your soul is already and always right there. So UCFL, it is my prayer that begins and ends with Ashe Ashe for you, that you know a little bit more of yourself from this day forward. And so when we start to think of who we are in the world, we are the power that makes things happen and brings about change in our lives. I am the power. Can we say it together? I am the power. Beloved, these things have I spoken unto you, that they may be true in you, for you, and as you. I release these words to let them do what they do, because I know that they can only do good in me and in you. Amen. Ashe, ashe. And so it is. Thank you, beloved.
So let's take those thoughts into meditation. I will invite you to become comfortable and undistracted, removing any debris, anything in your lap, and begin to breathe deeply. If you're comfortable closing your outer eyes, I invite you to do so. And come with me into the transformation station, where we recognize not only do we have the power, but we are the power. I am the power. Allow that to roll around in your mind. I am the power. Now allow that to circulate through your body and come into your heart space, where that affirmation gets energized with truth. We know that it's well enough to have the thought, but without feeling, it is simply a thought. I am the power is what we operate with to recognize that we can transform anything in our lives. Anything and everything. Now you may be thinking, I've got a lot to transform, if you only knew. And my answer is still anything and everything. You and you alone know what you have going on in your experience of life in this moment. And you alone know what that feels like, sounds like, tastes like. And if you, like me, are ready to stop rolling it over and over and over, and you're ready to transform that feeling, claim, I am the power. So whatever that obstacle or challenge or thing is, pull it out of you. Lovingly, gracefully, graciously, pull it out and lay it in front of you. Through your mind's eye, take a good look and come into a higher thought, a new thought. This thing is an experience. This thing tastes bad. This thing feels bad. This thing that I feel powerless to control in my life is not telling me the truth. So as we breathe and we allow for congestion to fall away, chatter to fall away, we come into alignment with the pureness of truth. I have the power. I am the power. I do God power. and watch that thing fall away. The edges soften, the voices quiet, the bitterness to ease. And where that once was, love floods in. Where love floods in, we recognize that there is one presence and one power, always active, always good. For that truth and for that knowing, we are grateful. Let us remember and allow for that truth to lead us, and illusions to remain an illusion. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so it is. Ashe, ashe.